Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
We put thousands of officers on the street, and I think the show of force from the police and frankly the show of unity from communities together defeated the challenges that we've seen. And it went off very peacefully last night.
So, having braced for protests and riots, that was the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Mark Rowley, on a successful deterrence. Hello, you're listening to Bloomberg UK Politics. I'm Caroline Hepker.
And I'm Yuan. Welcome to the programme. So yesterday evening, fears of continued violence and far-right demonstrations swirled around multiple cities in the UK, and tensions ran high after messages were shared by agitators with lists of addresses to be targeted. 6,000 specialist police officers were deployed on the streets, tasked with protecting refugee and immigration-related facilities, with some shops boarding up their premises and some firms here in the City of London sending staff home as a precaution. But in the end, this morning, we woke up to headlines about thousands of anti-racism protesters lining the streets as police looked on. So very different to what we were expecting last night. Yeah, absolutely. Look, by about 9 o'clock last night, the fear really had faded. It leaves a lot of questions, though. Have the anti-immigration riots actually fizzled? What about the promised consequences? I was out and about in London, not at any protests or riots, but just noticing the police presence and a lot of police cars. We have seen over 400 arrests and 150 individuals charged. The first sentencing we heard about yesterday, just 10 days after the unrest began. So will this have a lingering effect on the UK economy, the image of Britain abroad, tourism? I think those are side issues. The much more important question right now that we're going to discuss on the programme are the legal proceedings. Can the courts and prisons keep up? Plus the complicated question of prosecuting online incitement of violence. Yeah, loads and loads of interesting legal questions. And we've got Bloomberg's legal reporter Jonny Browning here to answer them for us. Jonny, now there have been 400 arrests and 140 charges already. We had 3 men widely publicised as being given custodial sentences already. How did they get all this done so quickly? And what do you make of the sentences we've heard about so far?
I think Keir Starmer, a former public prosecutor himself, head of the Public Prosecution Service, the CPS, before, realises is that the courts need to be seen to be responding really quickly. In the riots that took place in 2011, the sort of learnings about that was about how to respond really quickly, both on the policing side and then also on the investigation and prosecution. And he's made a great play about actually those prosecutions coming really quickly. And the CPS has been sending out barrages of press releases every single time that they have either charged someone or secured a conviction because of the deterrent effect that comes with that. And swift justice, when it runs the whole way through, all the way to a sentence, then the message starts coming across, right? That it actually, if you turn up to a riot, you face a sentence of 2 years, 3 years as a minimum.
And that was clearly part of the strong messaging and widespread reporting of all of that messaging across the UK yesterday. But I wonder, with so many individuals and this emphasis on speed, how the justice system then ensures fair trials. Does it also risk playing into the right-wing narrative of what has been dubbed by them two-tier policing, although that's been very much rejected by the Met Police Commissioner and others?
Yeah. And the justice system is already on its knees. The court backlog is near the record levels it has been. It's well over 60,000 cases. And not only do we have a problem there, but we also have a problem around the prisons, which are not at 100% capacity, but they are at near capacity. Those are the challenges that the criminal justice system, the judges, have to confront. The cases that we've seen come through have often been accompanied by guilty pleas. So it's much easier to get to an end result quicker. And there will be trials that will happen where that due process takes place. But the convictions that we've seen so far stem from guilty pleas. And so in one sense, then, the the person who's been convicted can be dealt with quite swiftly. They might qualify for a reduced sentence as a result, actually, but it allows for a swifter process. The actual trials themselves will take a bit of time to come through.
Because just to put it into context for us, 10 days is incredibly swift.
It's incredibly swift. And if you were a complainant in a case and you'd been expecting your trial to come through, and then to see some of these cases being dealt with so swiftly, I think you would justly feel aggrieved by that. The thing is, though, the actual trials, when they take place, they will be conducted in the same way that they always are.
Yeah, you do wonder if you're one of the many people who've been waiting months and even years for justice, how you'd feel about all of this. I wanted to ask you about facial recognition, because this is something which the Prime Minister has mentioned that he'd like to see more of. Just tell us how much it's used by police forces in the UK at the moment, and how it could be used further, and of course the controversies around that.
Yeah, so there's a question about how it's deployed, and Starmer himself has said that this is he wants to encourage kind of more use of it. To distinguish, there are the live facial recognition, which is much more controversial, and then there's retrospective facial recognition, which is what is now being deployed by police all up and down the country to aid in investigations and to kind of result in charges. And that is less controversial because I think the public kind of is sort of pretty clear that it can be an investigative tool. Questions around sort of live facial recognition are still being fought over, and the UK, I think, maybe has been making more use of it than European countries on the continent. But it is, at the moment, we don't know how that is being used yet. We haven't seen any specific examples of it yet.
No, but I did note yesterday that there was discussion that retrospective facial recognition could and was being used by police across the UK, and that actually it was able to be used through face masks, and so that was, and through any facial covering, which did seem to be a direct, again, deterrence effort by the authorities in the UK for any potential rioters yesterday. So I think that's sort of worth noting. In terms of the legal actions against individuals involved online, the Prime Minister has also been very clear and kept them in the same basket. If you do something in real life or online, it's the same thing if you're found guilty, as it were.
Yes, and then there have been, again, another set of press releases from the CPS saying something similar. There have been... we are aware of 2 convictions so far for inciting hatred online. They stem from YouTube and from Facebook. The action at the moment is on the individuals, not on the companies. The online safety bill it's received royal assent, but it is not in force. Ofcom put out a statement yesterday that pretty much made clear that it will not be enforced for months, and everybody is in one sense stuck with what they have at the moment. And then the question is, what can you do to hold the technology companies to account?
Yes,
reputationally, that can still be an impact, can still have an impact for some social media companies, but it's pretty unclear what legal action you can actually bring against a tech company under the current legislation.
Because it's a mighty stick, isn't it? The Online Safety Act, which has now been passed, as you say, has not been implemented by Ofcom, potentially allows them to fine companies up to 10% of global revenues. I mean, that's a maximum. But talking about huge sums of money, I wonder if you feel that Ofcom is kind of ready to do this. Obviously, well, they said they're not ready yet, but it's incredibly challenging, isn't it? It
is, and one of our reporters, I think, asked Ofcom would they speed up their kind of rollout, and I think the answer was probably no. Yeah, Ofcom is gearing up to be a more kind of engaged regulator in this space than it has ever been before. And that requires retooling, a rethink. We know Ofcom often more for its sort of TV investigations, for sort of ensuring impartiality. This is a completely different ask, and I think it's just clear they're not going to be rushed.
Not going to be rushed. That's interesting. Yes, a big stick, but a lot of questions about whether and how a UK regulator, might use it at some point in the future. Look, there's also the Bloomberg reporting that we talked about yesterday about foreign state actors coalescing on social media. And again, this is the source of investigation by the Home Office and by security authorities in the UK. So there's going to be a lot more thought on that, isn't there, in terms of the perpetrators potentially online and how one might hold those groups to account.
Yes, that reporting kind of showed how various sort of lies were being kind of propagated and pushed forward. That's a national security issue in it, really, rather than something that the kind of UK courts can deal with, or the sort of prosecutors on the ground. And I think, it's something that is almost sort of easier to deal with at a government level, and it's quite hard to see any specific actions sort of taken. There might be covert stuff that takes place separately, I suppose.
Yeah. So after this 9-10 days, Jonny, just a kind of last thought on what's been an extraordinary period. And everybody's been looking back, to the UK's history and recent past. What is the source of this? What will be the consequences and the results of it? In what has been the first huge test for this new government, what's in your mind now as we go over the next, go through the next few days?
Well, it feels like that the temperature has been lowered on the streets, but now it's time for the courts to step up. That is now where we're going to see that action lie.
Fascinating stuff. Bloomberg's legal reporter Jonny Browning. I think the interesting question really is, how does this change things as we look ahead? So next time this happens, and there will be a next time, are we more ready for it? Use of facial recognition technology and all this legislation over social media posts is all controversial stuff. So it'll be interesting to see if that's changed over the last couple of weeks.
But also you have to linger on the unprecedented turnout of people on high streets and town and city centres across the UK who received that message from government and authorities yesterday and wanted to send their own message back to, far right or rioters or whoever they are. And I think that actually is also something that is very novel for the UK. That's it from us for today. If you like the programme, don't forget to subscribe and give it 5 stars so that other people can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify or wherever you listen.
This episode was produced by Tira Adebayo and our audio engineer was Sean Gostamachia. I'm Yuan Potts.
And I'm Caroline Hepker, and we'll be back with more next week. This is Bloomberg.